Morning, everyone. You good? Okay. We didn't want the echo up here. Good morning. Welcome to the Monday morning meetings of the BOCC. Looks like this morning we have, I'll just take them in order, Facilities Department and Risk Management.
Good morning, Commissioners. Will Tostad, Facility Services Manager. You'll have to forgive me, but my voice is a little hoarse this morning. So what Savannah is handing out right now is the most revised copy of our 5-year plan, which you guys have seen a couple times. We were here last Wednesday and made an adjustment to 2 roofs, adding the admin and annex and taking off the jail as we did the evaluation of the roofs, and the jail section B had a couple years left. So that'll be the most recent revision that we went through on Wednesday. This is also my first time for this, the performance evaluation. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. And working through the template, I can kind of go some high level. We can go 30,000 feet and dive in if you guys have any further questions. I can go line by line, or I can go high level. I don't know what works best for you, Commissioners. Yeah. So we'll start off on current projects.
Before you do that, what's the budget in terms of what's available to maintenance to spend?
That's a good question. So for CIP, looking at 2024, we have about 3.3 million. That's in our capitals fund. In our general fund.
So I'm sorry, so in 2024, the bottom line of your plan is 3.3.
For capital improvements, correct.
Right. Do you have that in hand is the question? Or how much of the budget and how much of the this is the allocation of what budget?
This drives our budget. So this 3.34 is what drives our capital budget line by line. This is what we give Kathy.
Oh,
for our
you work
capital
it
improvement.
backwards.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And
With facilities, the facilities department is a general fund department.
It is. It's an internal service.
So the reserves that are familiar for other departments in public works doesn't happen with facilities. Their
Correct.
reserve is the general fund reserve.
Yes.
So
And if
that's
Sean
what
wants
it might
to.
be.
that's exactly the question I was asking.
Okay.
In all this time, I haven't realized that it's just quite, so we don't have any impressed account of any kind, which is part of the issue I've had before, because we have a lot of capital assets and we don't.
So Kathy can tell us how much is in the general funds reserve. And that's what we spend when they need more money, if it fits and we agree with the projects.
And that general fund reserve is for anything and everything.
Well, basically, anything that isn't funded with restricted funds, which road taxes would be an example of that.
Yes, that's correct.
And to hit on that a little bit more, like Savannah said, this is our capital
No, so
fund.
I still have, I'm sorry on this. I still need to understand. So basically, my experience is that if we don't have a fixed boundary on how much we can spend, we won't be as disciplined as we should. So do we have this number 3.3 originated from the top down, right? You said, and that 3.3 must have come from Kathy in finance?
We developed the 5-year plan when we brought it to the board and workshopped it a couple months back.
Right.
When we got the blessing to move forward, this plan, this dollar figure should have been adopted in our budget. So we gave this to Kathy and it was brought to the board and adopted.
So you're right. It was, Kathy gave her blessing based on the figures that she came up with. She has to follow our policy, which is at least 1 month's reserve in the general fund set aside. And then we also have the rainy day fund that's available. And so she's monitoring that checking account that we dip into as departments come along. Typically, they have to follow the budget, which is what they do a really good job of.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's good, except the rainy day fund is something I would be very careful about. But in going forward, as we build new things or buy new things, we can't do that without referring back to what I would call a rational maintenance policy. And I haven't seen that before, is my thought.
Okay, this capital fund.
Are you on?
Oh,
Green light?
yes, I'm on. And Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Or do I need to
Pull
pull
it closer.
closer? How about
There
that?
you go.
Much
The
better.
capital improvement plan actually is funded from a couple of different sources. It is funded from, am I saying this right?
REIT dollars, real estate. excise
Dollars.
tax.
$3. It also has $1 million transferred from the general fund into it on an annual basis. So it receives a little over the $3.3 million that's currently available. It also has
How
its
much?
I believe the current year is 3.3 for the capital expenditures. And it also has a bit of a fund balance itself because it's a separate fund, a special fund.
So I can infer from that then that in 2025, we've got to come up with another 3.5.
Correct, but it receives on an annual basis, it receives a distribution of revenues. It receives transfers in from general fund, about $1 million, and then the rest is from REIT funds. And in addition to that, I think it's about a little over $6 million of fund balance in that special fund.
What is the 6 million?
Fund balance in that particular fund. So it does have some additional reserves in that fund as well,
And that fund is a CIP fund.
in the CIP fund.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I asked you for draw a check on the CIP fund, you'd be able today to draw about a $6 million check.
After all the transfers in are done, yes.
Okay, thank you. So
So
our
it has,
flow-
so
our
it has
flow-
on an annual basis, it has a inflow of funds on an annual basis too.
So we're always sitting at about a $6 million float in that account?
It looks like historically they've been about anywhere from 4 million to 6 million. Yes.
Okay, and it's at 6 now.
Am I right? I'm
Okay.
going to rely on Sean's knowledge too, because he looks at this fund. I don't look at it as often as he probably does.
Good morning, Commissioner Sean Roy, Public Works. So we do maintain a fund balance in there. The purpose of that is regarding the REIT funds. So the REIT funds are a restricted revenue that come off of excise transactions. A certain value of those, 25% annually or $1 million can be used for maintenance activities instead of capital projects. So that is why we keep the balance at least $4 million for the REIT dollars. So we have the ability to use it for our maintenance projects. If we're looking at the plan, the entire first section is what's funded by that value, if that makes sense.
Okay, so all of this is not new construction. It's all maintenance.
There's some new construction and some maintenance mixed in here. Yes, sir.
Let's see.
So if we look at items 1 through 9, those would all be maintenance activities.
You're counting roof replacements as new projects?
We're
rather
gonna,
than
we're gonna
maintenance?
capitalize those as a new asset on the building. Yes, sir.
Okay, I just don't see new facilities coming on board. You're right, so this is all maintenance. Some big and some
It's-
even larger.
Sure. We are maintaining the buildings. We do categorize it as a capital asset if it's over certain thresholds and not part of the normal depreciable value of the asset.
So this is a little what I'm driving at. Our total capital asset base, buildings and things we own is like over 50 million.
I don't know the number fully depreciated.
Right, and so just for maintenance, a general commercial rule of thumb would be conservative is 10% probably. If we if we buy software, we're always paying 15% or more annual maintenance on it. I'm saying 10%. 10% is 5 million out of that group. So this is just an exercise to know where we really stand, so we don't continually paint ourselves in a corner, because that idle funds is really a temptation to spend it and buy something else. It's segregated. Like I've heard arguments before, if we have 6 million in the bank, we ought to be spending it. And I think that is correct. Otherwise, we're taxing people too much. But that 6 million has to be earmarked for, in this case, maintenance.
So one of the things that we also have to remember in terms of keeping a reserve is that the REIT fluctuates pretty dramatically. It's the buying and selling of property. And when the interest rates go up, not as many people exchange that property. So we can't always rely 100% on the REIT monies coming in. There's that fluctuation. So we have built in a cushion, as is appropriate for spending those funds. I had forgotten about that plan. I do remember years ago, we had a study done of the buildings, and the conclusion that came back was that we should be spending somewhere around $5 million to maintain everything that we have up to speed. And we were scraping by with maybe 2. I mean, we were really below the mark. And last couple of years, we've had a chance to catch up, in part because the general fund has been able to contribute money. And part of that is due to the big change is the financing from the landfill. And that's given us money that we didn't have in the earlier years. And it's allowed us to get caught up. I think staff had analyzed that same report and said they're aiming a little bit too high. And we're getting caught up and we're spending 3.5 million. And that's as long as we're making progress towards reaching those goals, and this 5-year plan is great, and we've adopted that, and unless there are some unexpected challenges that we haven't anticipated, we should be pretty good at funding all this. I eventually was going to ask Will, what are you deferring so far? And I know we did a little bit of adjustment. The latest one talks about moving those roof improvements ahead a few years.
Yep.
And if you had a consistent 3.5, and you had access to some more money,
Could I spend it?
what would you start attacking?
Um, so that's a great question. We are catching up on the roofs. We are catching up on HVAC. One thing that we are finding out is when we go to replace these HVAC units, it's not always like for like. There's valves. You can go through our, our CIP, that BAS, that's BACnet support for the Siemens control system. So it's not just, putting a heat pump in your house and replacing it and it's turnkey. When we're replacing these, these HVAC units, then it's controls that we have to address. That's probably the next one. I think you guys are both kind of saying the same thing about the 10% rule, 50 million in assets. The 10%, like Arn was alluding to, would be 5 million operating a year. If I had it, could I spend it? Yes. The next, big asset that we need to address is juvenile. I could probably easily spend 2.5 million there on HVAC, roof. But that's a part of the CIP plan down the road, unless we make an adjustment like we did with the roofs on this building, deferring the jail.
Yeah, if I'll belabor this just one last time. A big issue to us has been the Hall of Justice since quite a while.
Mhm.
And as we look at numbers of what it would take for us to build a new Hall of Justice of some kind, because what we have, it's a complex thing. I'm just saying a new Hall of Justice, a new courthouse would run us. If we could get by with 100 million, I'd be surprised. So let me just use 100 million. 10% of 100 million is what we should be allocating for the maintenance on it. Where does that take us on our general fund budget? Takes us down when the ink starts to change the color. So we don't have a lot of money is really what I'm saying.
So I can move forward with some projects that we finished towards the end of the year and some ongoing. HVAC repairs, we're still there as we're, repairing units that aren't on the list for replacement yet. I had one project coordinator, we had retirement, so now I have another project coordinator, and that's what I work off of is this 5-year plan to assign my project coordinators the projects. But we completed boathouse, exterior, interior flooring. We did some jail lighting retrofits. We have done courtroom 7 remodel, which was part of a tenant improvement on the CIP list, which is line 23, actually line 22. That's, by elected officials. Each year, there's a couple projects up to 250,000 that are voted on by the CIP committee. We've done elevator repairs, underground storage tank cleaning, admin server HVAC. We had a failed HVAC unit for IT. We worked with them on that. And another ongoing project that has been completed is the roof inspections, which then, allowed us to defer and move that CIP budget around.
Health Department roof. The health department roof.
Yep, we completed the health department roof. That was an ongoing, that's been needed to be done for years. They're very appreciative. And parking lots. So we're going to do the last north parking lot of the Hall of Justice next year, and then probably some striping and maybe patching at the jail parking lots as well. And then it'll be working off the list. Is there any projects you'd like me to revisit, or I can kind of go through the outline of the document that was sent out?
I know that the last time we talked, I had mentioned the museum door. We redid the health department door
Yep.
to eliminate the homeless hiding holes. Are there some other locations like that that you're continuing to look at and work on?
Yeah,
Because it
so
seems like those are like $20,000 projects, maybe, if you're lucky.
if you're lucky, yeah. So the museum's a little bit different than the health department, different layout. So I think we're working in-house. Dylan's working on that. We're gonna maybe do a wrought iron gate fence there. I think that might address the issue. Will trash still get thrown over it? Yes, but I think it will keep the main transients out. The other one's similar to the health department's, the annex. I have to clean almost every morning, especially after a long weekend, and it's lots of stuff. So that would be another one where we need to figure out what to do there. Maybe work off just the lower entry and close it in, or a roll-up door like the health department. So the annex and the museum are the other two big issues where there's campers.
Along those lines, my colleague leads me to remember a thing that we should have is the ability to be flexible. So these are your basic assumptions for priority. That's the cool thing, but in general, our priorities do change along the way, and so, or let me say, things come up. Now, I've asked this of Public Works before on a contract, what are the expected change orders? And they already have the funds to do the change orders. Here, my guess is that we have funds to spend up to 6 million if we had to.
If we had to.
Okay.
Correct.
Just needed to understand that. So typically, it's good for us to know what an annual variation is. So it's always good to say, we began the year with this thought in mind and we ended up spending this. It doesn't mean anything except over 5 years or 6 years, you start to see if you've got a habit or not habit or something you can count on. In addition, more top level, it was what, 2-3 months ago, maybe a little longer, when Public Works, I think with some amount of pride, announced that they had done some job that they were going to contract out, and they saved a third of the price, maybe $60,000-$80,000. And that means you're managing that resource pretty well. But here in maintenance, I don't get the impression we have too many maintenance people. I also don't get the impression that we have the variety of maintenance people on staff. So for a facility like this, I would normally expect to be able to have an electrician on board, a licensed electrician, that kind of thing, because you will, over the long term, I mean, we have a lot of facilities, period.
Yep.
And so this is not to infer that I'm saying we have to do that. I say we have to understand that that's another option we have on a lot of these things. Things that would cost 20,000 would probably be at 15,000. I'm just taking a guess and so forth. In maintenance, there always seems to be a need. In other words, I seldom see excess people for insufficient work. Here we've got the typical, I call it like IT. There's always more that needs to be done, and you'll never get enough staff to do it all.
Yep.
I think that's a valid discussion at some point.
Yeah, and you are absolutely correct. Could I use a couple more people? Yes. On our work order system, we are still, a little reactive. Thankfully, we do have that ongoing HVAC preventative maintenance that was approved annually. I think we have $100,000 up to $100,000. So that's helping with, a lot of these work orders and reactive work orders. So that's a big help, as that's the missing void, because we don't have an HVAC technician on staff or an electrician. So you're absolutely correct there.
So I think in that sense, I would encourage, if you know somebody that wants a job that is pretty good in these things, I would hope that you would caucus amongst yourselves and then bring it to us and say, I know it's not in the budget, but.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Historically, when we were trying to fill these positions, we were trying to fill niches for, electrician, or do they have HVAC experience? Over the last 2 years, 3 years, it's been very difficult to recruit that level of experience for the pay, right? But that was historically like what we were trying to do, what facilities was trying to do before my time there, but was trying to get an HVAC, an electrician, a plumber. Unfortunately, it has been difficult, but I definitely like that suggestion of
Yeah.
bringing it forward.
That's okay with you guys, right?
I'm sure maintenance is no different than other departments. Kathy's dealing with budget amendment suggestions all the
Mhm,
time. So as the need comes up, as you find.
Yeah.
Can we hire a printer? Something that'll print the thing about like this many times over?
Oh, I thought you meant an actual
Yes.
printer. It's like, oh, maybe. Going back, just kind of expanding a little bit on what Commissioner Mortensen said about, Public Works and trying to utilize our own crews to do some of the work. We do try to, in maintenance, try to do similar tasks to save money. For example, instead of hiring a general contractor that could cost another 15 to 20,000, we'll have a project coordinator, if they don't have too many projects, manage that project to save that amount of money to maybe, bring in the cost a little bit less. Especially with change orders, that's always those are always tough. So as a group, we've really been trying to hit up the scopes on these projects, of course, prior to them going out to bid, right? And really trying to button up the scope as much as we possibly can to avoid future changes. And then also we've been working with purchasing and saying, hey, let's go out to bid on this. This is such a major change that we need more bids. We can't just go with the suggested change order. So we have been making small changes in an effort to reduce those and save money.
And yeah, and on that as well, I do have a good staff. They can do some of smaller construction projects, but with the limited staff, if it's a medium-sized project, that pulls off, 2 or 3 guys onto work orders, things that are breaking on the daily around the county. They've done some small flooring projects, countertops, painting.
Mhm.
So we can't do that in-house, which does save money.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you guys have any other questions on past, current, future projects? Any other? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely. Oh, wow.
You
There we
push the button. All right, get real close. Now, the one thing that jumps off the page to me here is the juvenile center, which is so the last count I heard, there was 8 kids in there, right? And like half of this thing is already shut off. They don't even use it. In fact, last term I heard was uninhabitable. Is that correct?
I believe you're referring to C&D pods, I think. From a maintenance perspective, one of those pods is usable. They use it as like an overflow. They also use it for training. I can't speak to the pod D or what the current state is or the current counts there, like child counts. I'm not sure.
There was 11 on Friday.
Okay. So, in a 2-year span here, that's a lot of millions of dollars. Are you tearing off the whole roof, or is this just redoing the surfacing?
Yeah, so at juvenile, it's one of the main reasons it's going to be expensive is there's 11 sections on that roof. It's however it was designed when it was designed. It's also ballasted, so there's rocks on it, which back in the day, I think it was for technology UV protection. But yes, complete tear off is what it needs. Also, with it being ballasted, it makes it hard for repairs. You can't find it. You have to move the rocks out of the way, seal it. We have done that, but yes, it's complete tear off. as well as, you know, the HVAC units there are end of life.
So but you're not going down into the trusses or the framing of
No.
it, no, just the roofing.
Yep, just to the deck.
That's a lot of money, but I mean, no slight on you guys. It's just, that's how it goes. I know, but
Yeah.
well, that's a lot of money for buildings that aren't, we're not getting a lot of use out of that.
Well, you know, Tim, state law requires that a county of our size have 24/7 juvenile residential facility. We actually, with those 11 that show up, that includes other counties, smaller counties that send their juveniles to us. So the counts overall on juvenile detention is way down. We have, I think the number was around 100 or 120 youth who are on probation or some kind of oversight. So that function is also operated out of that building, but obviously the cells are underutilized. We have had ongoing discussions between us and the Superior Court system on alternative uses. And we're
Yeah, I
trying
know
to
you've
figure
been.
out, are there some other needs that we could, the county under the juvenile system does send certain juveniles out of the state to get the kinds of specific treatment programs that we don't have access to here. So we might be looking at that as a new program that we could offer. But again, that takes a while to develop all those specs and find out exactly
Yeah.
the costs may be different. So
Well, so you say there's 11 pods there or something like that, or
11 roof sections.
11 roof sections, and this is gonna cover 4 of those? Cause I see 4
no.
pods here, F through K. Oh, I see, A through E, F
Yeah.
through K. So you're doing the whole thing then?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, it would, with such a large expenditure, that's why it's split between 25 and 26, 2 separate years.
Okay.
And then like it says, A through E, we'd hit that on 1 year, F through K next year. Because it would be such a large expenditure to go at once. Yeah, thank you. Anything else, commissioners? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director, and I'm joined with Scott.
Hello, risk analyst.
And Scott's going to do most of our presentation. He's pulled most of these numbers together for us.
Can you guys hear me okay? Good volume? All right. So this first slide is total payments made through the life of the claim by year. We have data going back further, but 2017 seems to be where the data kind of changes. So I thought that was a good starting point. So this graph shows for every claim, the total amount we paid starting that year. And above that, there's the average of days claims are open. So for example, in 2017, we had 29 incidences that started in 2017 for a total of $136,761.40 that we paid for each of those claims. That we paid total for those claims that started in 2017.
So if I may ask, just for clear, I think you said it, it's kind of clever, so I want to be sure I understand it. So there was a claim in 2017, and whether it was settled in 2020 or 2017, the amount is in the 2017 column.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And the average of days claims open is the average of days that each of those claims are open for the average of that year. So if it started in 2017 and it went through 2019, that data is in there as well. Next slide.
So before you go to the next slide, this looks interesting. I'm trying to digest that. Is there any that peak in 2019 is a single claim, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and and we could infer that likelihood based on the count being about the same as in
2019 was the year of a fatality.
Yeah, so this graph is really interesting, but we have to be careful that our inclination is to say, oh, 2019 was a bad year. Well, bad year in what sense?
There was at least one major item that made that an anomaly.
Right, and in that case, I might want to put into the bar or something like that, what I call the variance number. Anyhow. We're from a statistical sense of the variance. So the mean was this, but the variance was.
Sure, I can add that. This slide is showing the total actual claims that we paid. Oh, I'm sorry. The total actual claims paid by year. So this is what we actually paid in each of the years. So in 2017, for example, that's what we paid total. The line above that is the actual claims that had started that year. So for 2017, 29 claims were opened. And that's the amount that we paid for that year.
So what I see here is just on 2019, it was the risk pool contribution that would bring it up to.
No, this is workman's comp,
Oh.
and so this is just, workman's comp is outside of our risk pool. So these first slides that we're talking about are workers' comp.
Thank you.
So accidents that happen, say at the jail, that's a whole different area,
Yes,
unless they're employees. So it's,
these are employees,
Yeah.
workers' comp. Mhm.
So first slide is basically showing the dollar amount that that is attributed to the year the claim.
Yes, attributed
Incurred.
to the year that.
Your second slide is showing
Our basically
as
cash
we
flow,
paid it out.
our cash flow.
Yeah.
So on 2019, the difference is the stop loss insurance we have for LNI or for compensation, workman's comp.
On 2019, all of these are items that we pay. We haven't, on none of our claims have we hit our excess insurance policy. We do have a workman's comp excess insurance policy, and that kicks in at $750,000 per claim. So no claim has exceeded the excess policy amount yet.
So you will tell us where the balance went from 722 to 163?
It's paid out over these different years. So for 19, there is on that.
Total actual.
And on that
Okay.
fatality, we're paying the spouse on an annual basis. So that's why we're still incurring expenses on that 2019 claim. for the fatality. Does that make sense?
A little hard to follow.
But
But-
it's just two different ways of looking at it, so we thought you'd want to know.
You're showing us when it incurred and now you're showing us when you're actually paying for it.
Right, this one is cash flow.
Yeah, but we don't, in one case, it's all attributed to the year of the event, and the other one is spread out, and I have no idea. For example, I don't know how much that one payment that maybe seems to dominate is. I don't know how important that is, but I just don't see it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide.
So
Um,
can we make assumptions that with the pandemic, our accidents have fallen dramatically? Those charts seem to be headed downward, and I don't want to read too much into it, but
Well, as far as the pandemic, I believe that you actually, on that particular issue, and I have last.
I was actually just referring to the, just in general,
Yeah.
those years that we associate with the pandemic. But it just seems like those accidents, not because people were getting COVID, but just accidents overall seem to have declined, and am I reading too much into that?
I don't think there's enough data to show that. I think in 2020, there was a change, but I'm not sure what it was. Because you are right, there is a decline.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure if this would tell you that. I think we'd have to analyze a little bit deeper to figure out.
So for an organization with about 600 employees, these numbers strike me as being pretty low. And the other chart that shows, how many of different categories, we're still looking at really a relatively small number of accidents because our safety training program is going gangbusters, or
Because
I haven't gotten that sense either, but
because the employees don't like to hurt themselves.
There could be a lot of factors. There's definitely a lot of variables that have not taken into consideration, especially in this data that we're showing today. But that's something I can definitely follow up on. That's something that I'm actually trying to figure out is what's really our frequency? What should it be at? And where is it at now? So it's an ongoing analysis that we're doing.
I know that in the 11 years that I've been on the commission, we've seen a pretty healthy number of people retire, which means the average age of employees has dropped down. I don't know if that has any impact. You lose experience, so that's a vulnerability.
That's actually a really good point. That's something that I can definitely dig into, is what the average age is. Well, actually, I can look at what the years of service is. I can use that data to see what that's like, and maybe that's a contributing factor.
The next slide, interesting that you bring that up, because this slide, just for the last 2 years, the most common workers' comp claim is related to slip fall. And this is the slide that has how many of the cases were COVID that were workers' comp. Oops.
Not too many.
Oh, it is on a timer?
Oh, it's on, oh, okay.
Okay.
Noise is kind of an interesting one. That one seems to be pulling previous employee years. So just this year, we actually had to add 2 for our workers' comp from our previous employees who have submitted a claim for noise or hearing loss. And that's something that the more data we collect on that specifically, the better. Because I do think that there's things that we can do now to help that.
So did you, in the noise one, that means I've been operating equipment and beginning to lose my hearing?
Mhm.
Well, that's really hard to prove or, okay.
Mhm.
And in fact, you notice I've been struggling with hearing aids, and I just saw an article that that COVID is reported now, both the real disease and the vaccine to have impacted the hearing of some people. And that's,
That's interesting.
yeah, it's interesting for me too, because as of COVID, I know my decline in hearing is such that I can hear a sound fairly well, but I cannot tell the difference when you're saying a word that begins with F or S. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying yet. And I try to derive a lot by context. When I get presented a lot of data that I'm trying to think about and you're speaking, I'm like, I can't keep up with both because it takes a lot more processing when you can't hear it well. So anyhow.
Next slide, please.
So on liability claims, these are our tort claims. These are truly the items that are with our risk pool. And so during the month of February, and I'm going to report this every month, open cases, 0. We didn't have any new cases. Closed cases, 2 in February. And for total open cases at the end of February of 9.
I don't understand this.
So this is with our risk pool. Sorry, so I threw in the liability claims. We're switching from workers' comp to liability claims, which is our tort and our litigation areas. And we keep track of the cases that we opened during a month, the cases that we closed during a month, and then in total, the open cases that we have cumulative is 9
So
as of the end of February.
So I should infer from this that during the month of February, seven cases were closed.
No, two cases were closed. I can make this where we can start out with beginning number from the last month, open cases, closed cases, and then ending balance. How about, would that be?
Yes, anything would
Okay.
help. Are you folks having trouble understanding this?
Well, the way I read it is we started the month with 11 cases and we're down to 9.
Right, right.
And there weren't any added.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
how can you have
that's the
11?
positive.
How can you have 11 cases? Is there a difference between an open case and just a case? I mean, a case is either open or closed, right?
Yes, maybe I should have said total cases. They're open at the, there are cases that are being worked and are open. Yeah, I probably should have said just total cases at the end of February.
So repeat what you said, please.
Well, the way I read it, since there was nothing opened in February, we had to start the month with 11
Yes,
because 2 closed during the month that brought us down to 9. So
yeah,
Beginning balance and ending balance.
yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, that
I'll
might
go
help.
back to my accounting.
yeah, the open
That would make
cases may
sense.
be a little bit
Yeah,
deceiving there. I read it as cases you physically opened up because we got them in, but
no. 9 cases are in process at the end of February.
a lot of these are like tort claims we get in for various things.
They're tort or litigation, either one.
So to make it a little bit more confusing, this actually is this slide's out of place. This is going back to workers' comp. So sorry about that. This was a mistake that was just found. So going back to workers' comp, the summary of 2024, most common injury was slips and falls, and currently we have 17 open claims.
So in this case, we're back to workers' comp.
That's correct, yes.
We
Okay,
put the liability claim slide in the wrong space, so.
so is it reasonable to is a request to keep them separate, is it reasonable?
Yes, because the workers' comp is excluded from our risk pool, and then the liability claims are very different than workers' comp. So they involve,
Right, but in the
Numerous things.
presentation, when you, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sure you
so we'll
understand.
always keep them separate. We just kind of goofed up right there.
So
And
to be
then,
sure I understand, in this case, based on what you said, if you were to do it again, you would move the order of the slides.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
And you might start with one slide that's big. Working comp
Yes.
and working comp.
Actually,
Begin.
actually did have it in there, and I took it in to consolidate this a little bit, but anyway.
So, this is, now we're in a safety. We are working on a multitude of different types of projects. These 4 topics is kind of what we're currently working on right now, but it's not the whole picture. This is just something that this is what we're currently working on. So, AED contracts are AED machines. Building relationships with other departments, and then our total accident prevention program, as well as our injury incident reporting policy. And I'll talk with a little bit about each one of these in the next slide.
So on this slide, I probably talked about this before about AED contracts. I'm assuming that means AED equipment.
Yes.
And also, let's do something like, I'll please some people. I just have a heart attack and I'm falling over here. How long is it going to take you to get to me? Write the scenario, right this instant. And if I need an AED, you've got maybe 60 seconds to 90 seconds to make the difference between success and failure. I can't see that happening now.
And
So if I take a look at all these things, injury incident reporting policy, I'm like, accident prevention program, I'll tell you stories about accidents at sea. And then building relationship with departments, I'm saying, AD contracts, I'm saying that's one of your employees and we could, okay, you get the picture.
mhm,
I think we have a machine right down the hall, don't we?
we do.
We do.
Yeah.
But you also have to have someone who knows
Have
how
to
to
have
use it.
somebody
Yeah.
who's CPR
We
trained.
got one, yeah.
You don't want me to jump on and just start zapping you?
Hey, that'd be all right, it might help.
Maybe.
We do, right there.
Tim, excuse me, I can't hear you.
So to talk a little bit more about the AEDs, what we're specifically talking about is really consolidating all of our AED vendors onto one sole contractor for cost savings. Also, really to manage the system a little bit better and to reallocate our resources so that we're a little bit more efficient. This could include maintenance. We haven't explored that possibility far enough yet because we are still pricing out which vendors to use. But if we could reconsolidate our many vendors that we use in many departments into something more universal, I think it would be beneficial.
So the reason we have many vendors is that department heads have gone out and purchased on their own.
That's correct.
Yep.
And, but once you purchase them, what's the relationship with the vendor? I mean,
So that's a good question. It depends. There are some vendors that either rent them to us, so we don't actually own them all. There's some vendors that we have purchased, but they have a maintenance plan that's attached to them. Certifications, other things like that. What our goal is to reconsolidate the AEDs so that it's one vendor, one company, the same AED. And so that we have a better idea on the maintenance costs as well. Because right now it's really hard to put a number on how much we're putting down on maintenance for these things, or if they're being done at all.
And I'm assuming we have the numbers that are required. I'm not sure what the requirements are.
That's also going to be part of our project, is to looking to make sure that we do have the right, like, for example, we have one in our area. And then we found out that it was beeping and needed a new battery. So that one was not on maintenance, and we had to go out and purchase, risk management actually purchased it for us, a new battery last year. So
How did you find out it was leaking?
it was in a closet in our suite, and it was beeping. And so that beep is to alert you that the battery's slowly going down, and so that it's time to replace the battery.
Is that something that we would put on a maintenance list to just every month go through and check
That's-
those?
Yeah.
That's one of the avenues we can explore is having something set up that's automatic with the vendor.
So whenever I see cost savings claims or potential claims, and what kind of dollars are we talking about here?
I don't know, we've just started looking at this. We found out that on state of Washington, there's 3 vendors with statewide contracts, and they have different programs and different amounts. So we need to look at each one of them to determine what's the best for us.
Okay, we've recently purchased AED devices, haven't we? The sheriff, Hall of Justice, do you recall any of that, Dennis?
Yeah, they're actually a prime example. They actually have a subscription service over
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry.
A prime example, they have a subscription service.
Okay,
At the
and so
Superior
how
Court.
much are they spending, and can you do it on a gross per unit
Mhm.
kind of number?
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that one was like $149 for the annual maintenance contract per AED.
Yeah, there's more research that needs to be done with that specific vendor. It seems like we're not getting any services for that.
Right, and so that's kind of my point in all this is that I think compared to the task, if you will, these cost savings may be insignificant, and
Yeah. It probably, in some cases, we don't even have a maintenance contract, and we're
Yeah.
just having to go out and buy the battery as they,
right, so I'm suggesting that the most reliable way of going, the most reliable vendor is something I would favor over, but I have to know, are we talking $10,000 a year, or are we talking 150,000? Yeah, and so, and then having a one sole source on items is often a good cost saving thing, but it puts you in a bind sometimes. So I like always having options so that we don't have to buy all our drugs from China, say, or something like that. I didn't say that, did I? I
Yeah.
did.
also as part of this project, Scott has recommended, and it's a good recommendation, that we need to have diagrams of all of our buildings, like we have our evacuation plans, and have on that where our AEDs are actually located. That's something we need to have on those evacuation plans as well, as a supplement.
So,
Yeah.
so that would be in addition to the little maps that we have out near
Right.
elevators.
And
The
have,
ones that indicate where Parks and Rec are located in this building and something called the Vault.
mm,
Look at those maps. They are way behind.
When we go on airplanes, often, we'll look at the safety card. Well, some of us do. And, it's a pictorial and, sometimes, anyhow, I'm hoping that AED stations have a pictorial because somebody capable or someone experienced may not be there, but they're still capable and intelligent enough to say, okay, I got to do this.
Yeah, they, AEDs for the most part have placards that come with
mhm.
instructions, really easy instructions to,
Big.
it's usually 3
sacred-
steps.
Yeah.
Onto the accident prevention program. This is going to be an ongoing project. It's pretty expansive. We do have areas that we need to update, just if you just look at the staffing. And to go through each of the accident prevention program chapters on specific topics, to recommend specific training for those applications. I know I'm being pretty vague, but it's a project that's going to take some time. Right now, we are looking at areas for evacuation plans, protocols for injury and accident reporting are the 2 that we're looking at right now. Which brings me up to injury incident reporting. We do have processes in place to report injuries or incidences. The process that we want to, that process specifically that we want to update and improve on is so that it's easier to submit and send out to us so that we get the information correct. So what we're doing is we're actually making it electronic. So the forms right now are, for the most part, are written down. And we're changing that so that they're electronic so that when they submit it to us, there's not really any question on the data that they put on those forms. That will help with turnaround on claims as well as processing those claims and to collect that data as well. If we can collect that data, it would help us to plan a little bit better maybe, or to show any trends in our injuries. So that's the goal. Next slide. Thank you. This is our training goals. We're right now in the process of making more training available to employees, external and internal. We're pulling our resources from Risk Pool and LNI, and there's other training sources that are external as well that we're looking into, but Risk Pool and the LNI contacts that we have, they have extensive training that we could actually utilize and pull into NeoGov to track.
A question on the policy on this, in some companies, there are many offerings of training of some form or some form or another. And typically, if it is included in your normal working hours, that is to say the company is paying for that, you get a lot more subscribers, if you will, than as if you had to do it for your own edification. Some departments just can't necessarily afford losing staff at certain times during certain events. I think, and I'm going to talk out loud here, I'm not sure. I think the department heads should be the ones that tell their employees which training they would like them to take. That's one category of training. Then there's a mandatory category training, and that would still be requested from the department head to put that on the schedule for their employee in some way. But you see the distinction between the two, I think, is important. We want to let the department heads have as much flexibility as possible. Now, there's some things, if there's a speaker that's coming here from the risk pool or whatever it is, then you can't schedule them 15 times. So there will be exceptions. What I'm saying in general, you're not, tells me you understand my, okay.
Yeah, so we'll put a plug in for, we have a supervisory training that the risk pool is putting on. It's selected dates. And so HR has organized that, and the information has gone out about that. So it's a supervisory training. It's got several different modules in it, and it's a very good training, but it's scheduled. There are other trainings. Most of the trainings that we're trying to offer are those that you can take as you need them, or as you have time, or as your department can schedule you to be on training. So
So yeah, the next point is to,
I do remember several years ago, I think it might have been with Clyde, that when we had the graph of accidents and claims, we also had the departments identified. So we know where the claims were. And of course, some departments have more employees than others, so that kind of skews that as well. I don't know if, when we get to the point of emphasizing we need more training in order to address the slips and falls and those kinds of things, if that's useful information
yeah,
to gather.
we have that data and we can make it available
mhm.
for sure. So working with departments on specific training programs for their needs, we're trying to hone in on specific training for those departments. So like sheriff's office would have a different de-escalating training than front-facing or customer-facing department. So working with those departments to get in feedback is crucial.
But when you mention the sheriff's department, that's another set of training that is really the business of the department head. And so I would expect that you would be maybe collecting data, but nothing else.
We haven't, well, specifically on the sheriff's department one, it's available, and it's been available on Neoga for a while. So they actually can elect when they want to take it.
Yeah.
So we haven't forced anybody to take any training. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to have the resources available, pulled in, so that if training is necessary or is recommended, that we have that ready for them so that they can take the training that they need. Include training on areas. So kind of, again, an example that we're working on is de-escalating training, trespass training, and we have some modules already for slips and trips and falls. I just don't think anybody's aware of that yet. So we're trying to make that more available so that departments that have a high frequency in slips, trips, and falls, they can use that training as well. Next slide. So kind of just summarizing what we're doing. So we're collecting and tracking training data to improve future programs. And then we're addressing any overdue and anniversary trainings that we have assigned employees to. And then our third one is creating learning plans tailored for departments and positions by using feedback. Next slide. So this data is from NeoGov. It's all of our data that we've collected since 2014. So all the training that we have imported over the years, this is the overall percent completion of all the courses that we've taken since 2014. So as you can see, we have about 89 to 90% completed. This does not capture this year's, this captures overall. And we do have ways to hone in and change this. We just have to do it internally because NeoGov is, the parameters are pretty constrained. So in future presentations, we'll have a better idea of what we're actually doing currently than just the overall picture. But this is just to give you an idea of where we're at. I think
That's it.
that's it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can move right. Okay. So we're changing order just a little bit, okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning. We have an attorney call. They're on our line right now. We have got Jay Durr from Van Ness and Andrew. They've been working on our surface mine ordinance and they wanted to give our board an update before we proceed any further. And then I know Doug is on as well. So and then we'll go back in order. It's all you, Jay.
All right, good morning. Can you all hear me okay? Great,
Yes.
great. So appreciate the time to give you an update. You probably recall we met, I guess, quite a few months ago now to talk about sort of the surface mining ordinance, interim ordinance in the county and how to revise it to address sort of the legal requirements for mining ordinance and then bring it to final review and completion before the expiration of the current interim ordinance, which happens, I believe, in June. So we've been working with your staff for a couple of months now, working through suggested revisions of the code. And we're ready to, I want to walk you through the key things that we're bringing forward, and then we're ready to take it back through the process. So I'll give you the overview, then talk a little bit about next steps, and then mostly leave it for questions. So what we've basically done is largely worked within the framework the county had already adopted, but there are a few key differences in what we're ready to bring forward to you from what you last saw, and that's what I really want to highlight for you. One of the key differences in the ordinance that we're bringing forward is it now focuses those areas in the county where a surface mining special use permit would be allowed. So rather than being allowed only in the mineral lands designated parcels in the comp plan, or rather than being allowed everywhere in the county, the proposed ordinance would allow surface mining special use permits in the Ag 38 zoning district, the Forestry Recreation zoning district, and within the unzoned areas of the county, which is actually a large portion of your county, but the unzoned areas that have either remote mineral lands or forest resource lands comp plan designations. So we would look to the comp plan designations for the unzoned areas of the county as to where the surface mining special use permits would be allowed. So that's kind of still a significant area of the county. I think what we think is an appropriate area of the county, but it doesn't keep it narrowed to only the mineral lands designated areas in the comp plan. And the reason for that primarily is the Washington Department of Natural Resources is working on some updated mapping for mineral resource lands. It's not done yet for Cowlitz County. If and when that gets done, there may be value in taking a fresh look at the mineral lands comp plan designations in the county but not at this time. So that's kind of key item number one in what we're bringing forward. Then kind of key item number two, we went through.
Question on
Yeah,
number one,
sure.
with, with your permission, Mr. Chairman? Yeah, always trying to find whatever might be the pathological case that sends us crazy. If a comp plan changes and now makes a mine in the wrong place in the sense of they couldn't get a permit today for what they got 5 years ago, those are all grandfathered in by general law?
So yeah, yes, there are provisions in your code already, which we aren't changing, which deal with existing uses that have permits. I guess the other thing I'd say is when you did your comp plan mineral lands designation process some time ago, it's my understanding all the existing operations got that designation. So some of them actually even have a more urban level of zoning, but they have an existing mining operation. So those are not changed by anything we're doing here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The second kind of category of things that we worked on that are a little different than what came out of the Planning Commission and the stakeholder group is we made a few siting and operational standard and noticing requirement changes. And I would say to stick more closely with what's required by state law. There are a few instances in your current code where you were imposing different or more requirements than what the state law required. And it just seemed like it struck a better balance between sort of property rights and meeting legal requirements to make some changes. So these are things like how far out you have to go to give notice of permit applications, how far out you have to to give notice on title of land that's located near a mining operation. So there are a few changes that we're proposing that really, I would say, tighten things up to basically stick with what you're required to do by state law and not necessarily impose more or different from that. So let me pause there to see if you have questions, and we can go into details on any of this a little bit later if you want to. The third thing, then I'll move on to what makes it look like a lot of changes, is we actually move things around in your code. So your current code had chapter 1801 special uses, but then it also talked about special uses in chapter 1810. And so there was some overlap, maybe some redundancy, some potential for inconsistency. And so what we actually have come up with is a recommendation that we move the chapter 1801 of your code, where the surface mining special use permit requirements used to be, and fold them into 1810, the special use section, and then actually to create a new section 1815 in your code, which would be the surface mining special use permit criteria. So that's kind of I'd call it mostly housekeeping and cleanup, but it makes it look like a lot of strikeout and underline because we move stuff around. But I think the staff felt that would be a more clear, user-friendly way to look at this issue in the code going forward in the future, rather than having a standalone in section 1801. And then the last thing we did, I'd call almost housekeeping. There were some various definitions you had in your code that at least when Andrew and I were taking a fresh look at it, we just thought, we suggested some changes to kind of clarify things. And then the other thing I'd add is staff, as they kind of took a fresh look at this. So we did some cleanup on some of the definitions, some of the other code provisions, just to make sure they clearly said what we thought the intent was that's already in the code. So that's kind of big picture of the changes. Let me just tell you briefly what we think the next steps are. And then I'm going to pause and see if Wayne or Doug have anything they want to add that I missed, and then questions for you. So what happens next is we have a code now ready to send back out for completing the review process. And given the time that's passed, it's our recommendation that county staff would redo the SEPA determination. So several years ago, there was a SEPA DNS issued for this code, which was appropriate, but it's old enough and there are enough changes particularly in some of the changes in the areas where this use would be permitted, that's our recommendation that we just redo SEPA again. And that, again, I don't want to be respectful of the SEPA process, so I don't want to tell you what the outcome of that process will be with your SEPA responsible official, but I think it's likely to be a DNS like it was last time, because this is the changes that we're proposing are not such that environmental impact statement should be required for them. But so there'd be a new SEPA determination that would be issued. And then the thought is we would go back to the working group that had worked on this ordinance in the past and the planning commissioners to sort of walk them through what we've done with the code recommendations that came out from them in the past. And we can even work up a track change document that shows them the changes from what they have. But as I indicated earlier, because things moved around, a lot of it is going to look like it changed when it really didn't. It just moved. So we'd work on a sort of a concise explanation for them of what they're seeing now versus what came out of their recommendation process in the past. Be an opportunity to take additional public comment on that and get the planning commission recommendation done to bring back to you probably late spring. So you're ready to take action before the current interim ordinance expires in June. So that's kind of our next steps, is to take this back to the working group probably in March. Have the working group work on it April, May, depending on how long they need, and bring it back to you May, June for your review and action. So that's that sort of concludes my overview. Let me pause and see if Wayne, if you have anything you want to add, or Doug, if you have anything you want to add that we should bring to the commissioner's attention.
No, thanks, Jay. That was great.
So
James,
the
Doug.
only,
I don't have anything else. I think we talked about briefly this may come in more than one ordinance simply because of we have a substantive change to one section and a codification change to another section, and we'll probably not combine the two. That's it.
From the perspective of the citizen out there, if in this process we find that there is some valid argument or something like that, we will exceed the drop dead date of June, right? So I would just like to express some optimism that we can make the deadline.
So that's certainly been my instruction, is to make the deadline, recognizing that, you got to be respectful of the public input. So we'll keep an eye on the deadline. If we're seeing that there's an important point that's being raised that needs more work and takes us past the deadline, then we can work on another extension to the interim ordinance. But I think this one, given the work that we've done, I think we ought to be able to work our way through the issue. There, it doesn't mean there won't be somebody that still wants something a little different than what's coming out of the code, but that's almost always the case in my experience, that you get a good document, but there are a few people that would like something a little different, a little more, a little less. But I think we should be able to make the June deadline.
Yep. Reminds me that no book of notoriety was put together by a group of people. There's typically an author, because everybody has to have their say in there, right?
Sure. Well, that's the public legislative process. It includes that part of the input.
So, Jay, if memory serves me correct, the difficulty with surface mines comes from neighbors complaining about A, noise, B, traffic congestion, and C, earth movement because of blasting.
Mhm.
I'm thinking, I'm not quite sure. What has been changed to address those main public concerns? I think there
So-
might also be water runoff problems might also be a concern for some folks.
Yeah, so I would say you're right. Those tend to be the key things. Of course, the trick can become that the travel route from the location of the mine to the market for the material can go through all kinds of areas. So there, it's not just neighbors right next to the mine. Sometimes neighbors that are quite a distance from the mine have issues and concerns about the travel route. But the code currently includes requirements to evaluate traffic impacts along the haul routes. It currently has setback requirements. It has hours of operation limitations. It has blasting notification requirements. And those are some examples of where we made maybe some minor changes, but mostly to stick with state law requirements. So the notice distances, the notice on title requirements, the hours of operation, those largely stick with a combination of what's currently in your code and state law requirement for that, rather than imposing greater noise limits or greater hour of operation limits, for example. But the hearing examiner who does the special use permit process will have the opportunity, based on testimony, if they think a particular haul route warrants a different set of requirements for hours of operation, then the hearing examiner would have the opportunity to take that record input and make those recommendations permit by permit, rather than in every permit.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense. It sounded like you're taking some of the special requirements that we have had in the past and eliminated them, making them strictly the state. And I'm wondering if that ends up solving the complaints from neighbors.
So, well, to be clear, I'm not sure any code fully solves complaints from the neighbors, because
Yes.
that's really up to them to decide whether they want to complain or not. But I wouldn't say we eliminated them. What I'd say, and for one example, there were some provisions in the code that imposed a greater distance on notice requirements, notice on title requirements, for warning your property is located within an X distance of a mining operation. And sort of our recommendation, and state law specified a distance that where you had to provide notice on title. And so at least my input, I mean, you could do either. My input was, if the county were to start imposing a notice on title beyond what state law requires, you could have the property owner of that property that's now encumbered with a notice complaining about, why are you putting notice on my title of my property if the state law doesn't require you to go that far out? So that's an example of where we kind of tighten things up to match the state law requirements. But otherwise, we carried forward county requirements for application notice distances, opportunity to participate at hearing, provide public comment. Those are all carried forward from what the county has had in the past.
Thank you.
So if there are no further question, again, I think our plan is we have a draft ordinance, and once we're ready to roll this out, we can certainly provide you a copy so you'll know what the working group and the planning commission are looking at. So if you have someone asking you, do you know what they're doing? You can say, yeah, we know what they're doing. I've got a copy of it. I just wanted to give you the highlights first, because it's, as I say, it's moved a lot of things around. So it'll look like a lot more changes than I think. And what we're going to work on and roll out with the stakeholder and planning commission group and for the public is kind of a roadmap of what we did from what you had before, to kind of help people see what's different and what's not different. And I think probably one area that warranted some of the changes, there was apparently a specific project that was underway when the work was being done before, and a lot of comments about that specific project. And so, and my understanding is that specific project is not happening anymore. So it may be that some of those comments are or are not still of concern to those people. So, but we'll find out.
Thank you.
Okay,
We have nothing more other than agenda stuff. I just wanted to make sure the board was okay with our direction going forward.
okay.
Thank you, Jay and Andrew.
Great,
Doug.
very good.
Appreciate all of you.
All right.
Appreciate it. So we're going back to agenda, information technology.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kim Hort, IT Director. Before you is a licensing adjustment for our PeopleSoft platform, which is our enterprise software used for HR and financial. Due to our terms and licensing, it's based off of our operating budget. And because of that, we have crossed over into a threshold that requires us to pay additional licensing. So this will increase our annual licensing for PeopleSoft by $17,350 a year.
Do you know what the next threshold is?
It goes by tens of millions. So I would have to circle back on what our operating budget is today, but it's by tens of millions.
But it's laid out in contract. Once you hit these levels, and it's this and this.
Yeah, they have the same thing over on the on the HR side based off of employee count. So there's two areas of which we could cross over.
Just in general, are you seeing significant changes for that maintenance fee? That is to say, you're paying it so you get software upgrades, and with all the hoopla about AI, are you seeing that hammering into you in some way?
There's features that are deployed within our patching cycle. So Oracle deploys them as bug fixes, enhancements, various updates, so tax updates. So we pay for that, and it's all encompassing. So yes, it's included and being encompassed in our licensing. However, we don't necessarily have every feature deployed that's available.
Okay,
Any other questions or concerns?
Just in terms of AI, are you the one that's keeping an eye on what's out there?
I would say that several individuals on the IT team are keeping an eye on it. It's not just me.
One of the things I can see, and I don't think it's today, and it's probably not tomorrow, but it may be sooner than we think, that there are a lot of things where we spend hours collecting information across many sources and all that. And part of the value of AI, it seems like they've cracked into the ability or capability of drawing information from many sources. And just for perspective, I'm old enough that I was at a Comdex when that was demonstration, first time ever in a public demonstration of a file being transferred from a machine from vendor A to vendor B over Ethernet, and people thought the world was the best possible thing. So we've come a long way, and one of the things that does vex me, and I'm pretty sure vexes the public, is a difficulty of retrieving the information. We know we have it, it's in storage someplace here, but trying to get to it requires expertise that is expert knowledge, particular to how we store things. If we can keep from having to have that expert knowledge spread about society, we will be way ahead of the game.
I agree. Thank you.
okay, thanks, Kim. Building and planning, or
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Mike Wilson, Calhoun County Building and Planning.
Okay, tomorrow on the agenda is the ordinance for update of Title 16 of the county code, which reflects the adoption at the state level of the 2021 Washington State Building Code. Our ordinance addresses those parts of the code which you have before you, just basically a summarization of those impacts. So you have a copy of the ordinance, I believe, in your possession. So if you'd like a moment to look over those bullet points, and if you have any questions, I'm here to hopefully answer those.
You've got an acronym that I don't understand. AHJ?
Those are particular appendices. Which one in particular are you asking about?
AHJ.
AHJ is
It's the
the,
fourth bullet under general. State requires the AHJ to identify.
oh, that's the appendices. Oh, you're talking about, that's the authority having jurisdiction. That's us. I thought you were referring to one of the appendices. My apologies. Sometimes those acronyms kind of sneak by and not aware of it.
Do we not have a lot of this under the current code? I mean, we have an AHJ under current code, do we?
Well, the AHJ is just that authority having jurisdiction. So every jurisdiction, for instance, in Cowlitz County, it's us. City of Longview has theirs, City of Woodland, on and on and on.
I'm reading through this and I've read, and you handed it to me before, and it basically states if we don't adopt this, then all kinds of bad things happen because the state runs it, and I'm trying to understand that because we already have stuff that gives us leeway anyway, correct? Do we not?
Well, that's just it. The local ordinance modifies that portion of the code to the extent that we have the ability to do so, to tailor it somewhat to the needs of the community. A good example is exemptions from permits. And under the IBC, we have exempted from permit those activities that are typical in industrial situations, such as along the waterfront, whereby they can be exempt from permit given their personnel and their expertise and ability to do the work without necessarily the oversight of this office. They've demonstrated they have the capabilities of doing so. So it seems to be, it would seem to be redundant or unnecessary to require that they obtain permits for every little, alteration that they make that we've, qualified as exemption from the permit.
And we have that ability right now.
Currently, yes, that's adopted.
If we don't adopt this new code, we stick with our old one, we lose that? It's
Yes.
still in code, right?
Well, no, it's,
So
the
how do
state
we
building
lose it?
code doesn't allow those exemptions. Those are exemptions that we crafted within our jurisdiction. So if we were to enforce strictly the state building code as adopted, those exemptions would not exist.
You have me confused. So we've adopted those exemptions. We can do that.
Those were adopted in 2016. Now, if we fail to update the code, we are left with the requirement of the RCW to strictly enforce the code as adopted by the state.
So in 2016, we didn't put an expiration date on that, right?
That I'd have to,
No, there's not an expiration date, but when the state adopts the next version of the code, we have to adopt that version. and we try to dumb it down a little bit to where it fits for Cowlitz County a little better than the harsh, like, we're trying to make it a little more vanilla instead of the black and white.
So we'll be getting a report from you on here's the new building code and here are our exceptions. And that would be
Yes.
all, we'd be readopting our exceptions.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so that our unique provisions will remain part of the law.
Correct.
So this may seem outrageous, but trying to figure out how to introduce this. So, recently, the flap of trying to ban natural gas exists and all kinds of stuff. Is that's not in the IBC, I don't think, is it?
That's the Washington State Energy Code.
Right. And that's still, so if someone comes to you and wants to put in a gas stove or a gas heater, that's no longer allowed?
No, it's not prohibited. There's been quite a bit of discussion. It's been a contentious discussion throughout the region under the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals for the use of natural gas. And what they've settled on to date is a matter of managing that under a table of credits that can be awarded or penalized depending on the path of compliance you choose to use. So they're not going to prohibit the use of natural gas, but you're
Okay,
going
I
to.
didn't mean, I appreciate your expertise here. I didn't mean to ask specifically about natural gas. That seemed as a poster boy example of what is our, we have a legal obligation based on the RCW, but the legal obligation may be causing us to do things that we know are completely insane, like you can't have natural gas. If that comes down, how do we respond to that?
Well, the energy code cannot be amended. It is what it is, and the local jurisdiction has no authority to amend it. The only amendments we can make are the administrative as far as the chapter 1 of for instance, violations and Board of Appeals and those sort of things, all administrative functions. The code,
Okay, I've got it. And
the code itself, we can't
And that's
amend.
actually, I think, what you were trying to pursue, right? It's like, at what point do we say,
Yeah, what point do we say? How many new restrictions are put on people with this? What do you think the cost of a home will be after this versus before?
The feedback I received from contractors is it, of course, significantly increases the cost of construction.
So how do we do that to the people of this county? Can't we be a sanctuary county for builders maybe?
oh, I like that.
This is nuts. How do we just keep adding these costs to the people of this county and we don't push back because the big bad evil state says we can't?
Well, there's another outlook on that, another possibility, and I'm probably gonna get strung up for this one, but there's a law that says going 70 miles an hour on the freeways maximum speed limit. If you go 70 miles an hour on the freeway, quite often you're stuck behind a truck doing about 70, maybe slightly less, and people on your on your bumper or your tail if you're out from the rightmost lane. So in other words, the people actually take those laws into account as this is so stupid, I'm not going to follow it. But then comes the enforcement element, and when I look at enforcement, I get, so you're going to enforce it regardless, right?
Well, I believe we could be in jeopardy for not enforcing.
And what would be the jeopardy be?
I would defer to council as to what those possibilities could be.
So several years ago,
I think we're one of the early counties to adopt a whole series of alternatives to the requirement to sprinkle homes out in the wilderness areas. And there was a matrix that we adopted as a local adjustment to that state standard. And I think in your last paragraph, you talk about the state has adopted a wildlife urban interface set of rules. And I think you then say your recommendation is going to be continue the adjustments that we adopted last time, because we'll still have more flexibility. Homeowners, property owners will still have more flexibility than allowed under the state. Which I think is good, because I think that kind of reasonableness is what we need to encourage. Is something similar to that happening with the natural gas appliance ban?
There again, we don't have the ability to amend the energy code. And each adoption cycle, it becomes more complex. And the way they manage this is by adding additional requirements with each cycle. For instance, in 2018, 6 energy credits were required for development of a residence. This time, 8 credits are required for development of residence. In 2018, they introduced a feature in the energy code, the carbon emission equalization component.
So explain an energy crew headed from the perspective of, I'm trying to build a house and you tell me I need 6 energy crew credits. How do I go about that?
They have tabled values and they're by description as to how you can achieve credits, and credits may be negative or positive. And it depends on what path you choose. Contractors are pretty clever about determining the most cost-effective path through achieving those credits.
So do the credits basically translate crudely into, this is another tax? I can buy my crew credits?
For instance, they're highly stressing heat pumps, air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps. You receive credit if you use such devices or systems.
Yeah, no, I just asked you, if I owe 3 energy credits, how do my house is, I don't want to make any other changes. How do I pay for 3 credits?
No, it's not as if you can buy.
It's not a
credits.
cash thing.
No, it's,
Okay, thanks.
it's wholly based upon the systems of their description. So the intent is to direct you in a particular way.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is one of those classic examples where we can't win this battle here, but we can. I guess what I'm saying is, I think they're doing what they have to do. I don't want to say anything more, but it's.
These things I struggle with because it ends up, I feel like I end up arguing with you guys, and I don't have an argument with you guys. I know you. I totally respect the knowledge base and what you're doing. Who stands up for the people? How do you just keep passing this on to the consumer? I mean, let's be honest. You could take building codes from the early 90s. Are those homes unsafe? Are they going to fall down? Are they going to burn up? Are they going to do any of those things? No, they're not. They just keep adding all this garbage to fit a political agenda. And who stands? Where do you take a stand? I don't know. I could be outvoted, but I don't know. I think I'm at a point where I say, I'd rather have the state sitting there and we could have the conversation instead of always have to pass it through you guys. I just think somebody needs to stand up to these idiots. And I don't know that it's us, but I'm pretty sure it's me.
Well, to that effort, there are many organizations, associations, building associations that petition the state for such changes, it's an uphill battle for them. Because you're talking about what's realistic, you know, I have a copy of the 1947 Standard Building Code. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick. And now you could stake that the same intent and it stacks up higher than this table. Is the intent to create a safe building environment, or has it been heavily influenced by politics? Yeah,
Political.
Well, of course,
You guys are.
of course, everything is based on political. I mean, we're talking policy, and the people who set the policy are the folks who control the legislature. And the folks who control the legislature don't live around here. And that's the frustration. They're trying to apply a solution to an urban, heavily densely populated urban area, which happens to have a majority of the people. And then I mean, we've seen this happen before. They pass rules and regulations. It's almost like the pandemic all over again. You know, in the more rural areas, we don't have the kind of significant air pollution problem that they're trying to avoid with eliminating the fossil fuels. So I don't know, just like we don't have the resources to enforce very many traffic, high-speed rules and regulations. We don't have the resources to enforce every single code that's comes down the line, do we? I mean, you only have so much that you can review. I'm not saying that we need a public pronunciation that we're only going to enforce a portion of the code. I don't know, but I don't know how other law enforcement agencies get around the fact that they don't have the resources to 100% enforce the law. I don't think you do either.
Yeah, but the real danger with that is, and I've heard this directly from the DOE when they were trying to put meters on private water wells. And their argument was to us, oh, don't worry about it. We don't have the means to enforce that. And that is probably a truism today, but they're not honorable. The fact that the legislature in their absolute ignorance does things like this is what we're discussing. And I know it's a little bit out of scope, but we have to figure out, are we part of the problem, or are we going to try and be part of the solution?
Yeah, I would.
It's immoral to allow the continuation of this.
That's where I struggle with. It's like I'm just complying with evil, and if I comply with evil, then I'm doing evil, and I can't do that. I just can't do it. And they're not providing solutions. What they're trying to do is to attain an agenda. It has nothing to do with trying to solve any problems. Like I say, they don't, it's an agenda-based program, and it's hard to fight. I get that, but somebody has to be somebody to stand. And I'm not, to me, it just seems, it's evil in works, and I'm not going to follow it. I can't do that. So.
Well, and commissioners, I'm sorry, we put these ordinances in front of you. It's not something that we want to bring forward. The state is mandating it.
I get like
but-
I'm arguing with you, and I'm not. really
No,
arguing with
I
you.
understand that, but I do commend Mike and all his efforts, and what he's trying to do is lessen the blow to what Cowlitz County is going to be faced if we don't adopt this. So that's why we're here, is just to try to lessen the blow of Cowlitz County. The energy code we cannot control. However, he has made some attempts in our code that we are bringing forward as to at least lessen the blow of what it is going to cost the homeowner more. And that's not what we want to see around this county either, but we are trying to do what we can.
If we said, okay, we'll do this, but the county will cover any increase in construction for a landowner, would you be as excited about this?
Well, we have a constitution that prevents that from happening.
no gift of public funds, so there. But
Well,
a
that
different, but a
isn't the
different question,
I
but a
didn't- I
different
didn't ask
question
you about
is,
public funds.
how
I
are we
wanted to
gonna,
know, would
how
you
are we
be
gonna deal? with-
Excited if we were paying the bill.
One of the things that I was thinking about is, on the one hand, the state law requires us to address affordable housing. We can't address affordable housing by adopting some of these restrictions.
That's why I say it's an agenda.
Yeah.
They don't really care about affordable housing. That's a sham. What it is a way for them to set money to put you in the housing they want you in. Has nothing to do with making it more affordable. Here, look at these shiny green ones while we take this out of your back pocket. Don't pay any attention to this hand. Just watch this hand. Well, this should be an interesting public meeting tomorrow.
Well,
Sorry you guys have it.
one thing, those people who go to the LSC can ask for a SEPA SEPA effort on this. Shouldn't this building code change or anything like that go under SEPA? Make them eat what they make us eat.
Well, I think we should be a sanctuary county.
Well, that too.
They probably already had the SEPA process done months ago. You know how easy it is to find out when SEPA hearings are. You
Yeah,
gotta read an awful lot of fine print,
yeah.
and it probably was up in the Seattle area papers, not down here.
Well, but I also have a very hard time thinking that the average person in Seattle is completely interested and involved and said, yeah, this is a good thing. They're not going to respond to a SEPA. I mean, I understand things when they're on a commercial building where people expect certain things. I mean, after all, this building was built when? In 19 something or other, and we can see it's unsafe. So I appreciate that, said in sarcasm, of course.
Yeah.
So a couple of different interesting strategies. Request a SEPA hearing based on our inability or based on our concern for addressing
Yeah.
affordable housing. They're making it more difficult for us to promote affordable housing, which is what the same people said they wanted.
Is this really on the agenda tomorrow? I don't
Yeah, it's on at 9:30.
Public hearing.
oh, the public hearing, thank you,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hoping the public comes out, who knows?
Well, we all need instead of a taxation is theft t-shirt, we need one that
Yeah.
says
Yeah.
building codes are tyrants.
They-
Oh,
They
dear.
they keep taking freedoms. It's just, taking away what created the wealth in this country. Anyway. It bugs me that we waste the talent in that department. I mean, Mike probably knows these things forwards and backwards, and we waste his talent on this kind of crap when we could be doing good stuff for people in this county. And,
Maybe more importantly is he knows the codes, but he can look at a building and say safe or unsafe, just on
exactly.
common sense.
Exactly. And we have him jumping through these type of nonsense hoops. And anyway, I'll get off my horse.
Well, the building official does have the authority to render interpretation, so I'll leave it at that.
It does have the authority to do what? To condemn?
Render interpretation.
Oh. Very good.
Thank you.
How long is a SEPA process if we were to order a SEPA review of this proposal tomorrow?
That's 14-day comment period.
Hmm?
14-day comment period,
14-day,
once it
that's
was
all.
issued.
14 working days, so that's almost 3 weeks,
14 calendar days.
calendar days.
Although that is the minimum, right? There's no maximum to it.
Sorry. Have to bring my
So with SEPA, it is a 14-day comment period. There's a number of options there, one being an appeal of the SEPA determination. And that's also assuming that a DNS, determination non-significant, would be issued versus a determination of significance, in which that case, it would require an environmental impact statement, which is a very lengthy process.
Okay, we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Health and Human Services. Or is it you? Oh, okay. See, he diving in front of you? Okay. You want us to calm down a little bit before you get up here? Is
You
that
know-
what you're saying?
I'm cutting the
Gina,
line.
Gina, you must have missed the part of these meetings when we said that the department that holds this afternoon buys lunch.
Gina's going, let Commissioner Dahl
See?
wind down here.
He's the money man. He knows how to save money, right?
Give him another cup of coffee. Let him wind down.
And I believe Sheriff Thurman is online as well. So Commissioners, just want to bring before you today an asset transfer that we're looking at through the Sheriff's Office. We have a 1994 Ford armored vehicle that was donated to the county in 2006. This vehicle is no longer needed by the department. And with this vehicle, there were a few stipulations on when we got it. And those were either we had to destroy the vehicle, transfer it to another government agency, or return it to the vendor that we received it from. The vendor has been purchased by another vendor, and I'm not sure if it's been 2 or 3 times, but they don't want it back. And so the sheriff has gone through pretty good lengths here to find another agency that's in want of this armored vehicle. And we'd like the blessing of the board to move forward with that. And if the sheriff has any additional items or comments on that?
No, I think you covered it well, Sean.
So this is not something on the agenda for tomorrow.
No, sir. This will be, we will toss it on the consent item. We do have a agreement that the sheriff has signed with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. We're outside of normal vehicle transfers here, so we're bringing it in front of the board to get a nod and set it up for the agenda next week.
So I missed, who was interested in the vehicle?
Lincoln County?
Yes, it's a Lincoln County Sheriff's Office over in Davenport, Washington. And I went through Doug Jensen. He wrote up a contract with them, kind of a hold harmless agreement between the counties. They're taking all responsibility for this vehicle moving forward, and takes this asset, I guess, off the books and just kind of cleaning things up. That we're not using it anymore, and it's more of a liability than I guess, an asset at this point.
Did we have something that replaced it, Brad, that we
Don't ask
utilize now?
that, don't ask that question, Rick.
Oh,
It's a sore spot for me,
oh,
but go
Yes.
ahead.
something to
Yes.
replace it, and it's just
Yes.
sitting there. And this county doesn't have what we have now, and they could use this.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's priced adequately. I assume it's a zero cost transfer?
Yes. We actually, yeah, they didn't ask for us to pay them to take it, so they're,
Good point.
Yeah. Oh, if we can help a county,
I don't have any
Okay.
concerns about it, so go ahead and place it on.
Where's the current vehicle kept? Not this one, but the replacement one. I'm struggling with remembering the exact, the Bearcat?
It's the barricade, yes. Yeah, it's down at the Public Works facility on Talleyway.
Oh. Well, as long as you're there, how many trips have been required with that? Not for anything, but action.
You're talking about the Bearcat?
Yeah,
How many trips or how many
Well-
missions it's been on, or?
yeah, how many missions? Thank you.
I don't have an exact number for you. I mean, it's used monthly in training, and we'd get a number of missions. I mean, most recently it was out a week ago today, actually, Monday morning in Kalama, if you're familiar with the standoff with the suspect
Right.
at Timco down there. It was one of the pieces of equipment that we use. They routinely use it on all missions like that.
So it was in Kalama and I missed it?
Yeah, he was there all night. So,
But
yes.
for what we were doing there, we could have used the old one, right?
In that particular setting, it would have been probably so. The problem with this old bank armored car, it's a two-wheel drive, it's heavy. And they found it had problems with it getting like off-road or getting into somebody's yard, getting stuck and that sort of thing. The newer ones, these Bearcats are four-wheel drive and more maneuverable. And they also have a higher degree of armor protection than this bank car. That was always, never really had a clear answer on what kind of bullets this bank armored car would stop. It was built in 1994. So that's always
Right.
been a question.
No, I was thinking of, the reason I asked that is Lincoln County will be able to get something useful out of it, I think.
They're hoping to. It's this vehicle has about 250,000 miles, best we can tell. Like the speedometer got changed at some point, the odometer, and all, but they felt that they could get some use out of it. So,
Okay, thank you.
I think you're good, John.
Thank you,
thank you.
Commissioners.
I need to be done by noon. Is that what I've heard? I'll try not to be that long. Good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. We have 4 items on the agenda tomorrow, so I wanted to touch base with the board about what those items are. The first 3 on the agenda are all our 3 coordinated entry contracts. We have been contracting the last few years with 3 different agencies for coordinated entry. That would be Emergency Support Shelter, Community House on Broadway, and Family Health Center. We see each year about 1,000 people that connect with coordinated entry. They're going and seeking resources for housing and other things. We do what's called a resource screening with most of those individuals. So we did 876 resource screenings last in 2023, which means those individuals were homeless at the time they connected with coordinated entry. From those, as just some reminders about coordinated entry, is that it's a required referral process. There's certain housing programs that have to accept these referrals from coordinated entry only. And so coordinated entry connects, we get some information, and then that helps us be able to make referrals to housing programs when they become open. Coordinated entry itself doesn't provide housing or emergency services. It's a connection to resources and then referrals when those programs have openings. So we did 133 referrals to housing programs last year. So of those individuals that connected, we were able to refer 133 households to housing programs. And again, it's based on the openings that programs have. It's not a reflection of coordinated entry. It's the program openings that they have. We're talking primarily about the HEN program. That's the largest referral source for coordinated entry is referrals to HEN. So of the 133, about 115 or so were to the HEN program. So it's the bulk of those referrals. We're able to do the referrals fairly quickly when programs let us know they have an opening. We confirm eligibility and pull a list to make referrals and get those individuals referred to that housing program. We have seen a benefit in having a variety of the providers that we have. So individuals can choose, or they can get connected with coordinated entry where they're at, like at ESS or at community house. If they're staying in the shelter, they can get connected with coordinated entry that way. So what's on the agenda tomorrow is their contracts for 2024. Community House on Broadway and Family Health Center, each of those contracts are about $53,000 for the year. Emergency Support Shelter is about $35,000 for the year. Like I said, we're have been happy with the variety of providers we've been working with and are able to make referrals, which is the primary purpose of coordinated entry, is to be able to make referrals to those specific housing programs. So I'm gonna pause there and see if there's any questions.
I'm surprised that it's 133. That seems low. Our point in time counts generally are in the 240, 250 plus areas.
Yeah.
What's,
I think these
why
are
isn't this number higher?
I think these are households.
These are households. These are households, and it's based on the openings that programs have. And so a lot of times programs are at capacity where, you know, a program can serve 50 households, for example. A lot of times they're at capacity.
But I think we understand that. I think what he's asking is out of all the people he's heard about that is homeless or need housing, now 133. Now, 1,000 households or 1,000 people?
1,000 households.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
But a household can be one person.
A household could be one person, it could be 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe a different question, if you add up all 3 agencies that do coordinated entry,
Mhm.
how many assessments were given?
So that's when I say resource screenings, that's the term we use. And we previously, they were called assessments, but when we changed things quite a bit in coordinated entry a few years ago, we're calling them resource screenings, because the other piece is that they're trying to, the housing referrals, as you've heard from the numbers, are few and far between compared to how many people connect with coordinated entry. And so what they'll do when they visit with people is let them know about all resources in the community that might be available. We often talk about the 7 pages of resources that we have. We maintain that primarily for coordinated entry so that they can give that to people. They can talk about what's on there and have them connected. These numbers of the 133 that were referred to the housing program, and as I mentioned, most of those were HIN. That number does not include programs that are not required to accept referrals from coordinated entry. So this is not including, things like other transitional housing or Oxford housing or anything like that. This is only programs that are required to accept referrals from coordinated entry, and it is primarily the HIN program.
It seems kind of expensive for just 130 people with $150,000. And I understand the document recording fee revenue has declined from last year. So are we cutting back elsewhere, or because these sound like the same figure that we had in the previous contract?
Right. These are the same figures. The providers have historically billed a little bit under than the total contract amount. We could also look at if our state grant could help pay for some of it as well, if we have room there to do that. But at this point, the numbers are the same.
So right now, this doesn't fund from the state grant, this funds from doc recording fees?
Correct. But we could look at that option to see if we can do that. And that would, and potentially free up a little bit of our document
Of
recording
course,
fees.
those state funds you refer to are the state's share of document recording fees. So that's less
Well-
too, right? Or no, are they adding additional? jump
No, you're correct.
dollars?
Yes. Yeah. It would just free up, it could potentially free up our local doc recording fees. Maybe that's what I should say.
And if the city of Longview keeps their share out of document recording fees, that puts an additional squeeze on our ability to fund this program at the same level. I'm just worried that we're shortchanging other programs that have a little more bang for the buck.
Even if Longview keeps their share, I think what we have coming in is able to cover what we have been historically funding on an annual basis. But like I said, I'm happy to look at if our state grant could help pay for.
And Longview will have to pay for coordinated entry too then, right?
No,
Oh,
no. The requirement comes to counties, and through that consolidated homeless grant.
So the funds you're talking about is that we may be able to take out of that's it, what is it, 4.3 or whatever it is,
Mhm.
million yearly grant from the state that goes to different things.
Yeah.
That it may be able to cover some of that because we usually don't use that whole grant, right?
Right, we could look at that. Yeah, we can look and see if some of that could cover.
And then it would free up some of the local doc recording fees for some of the projects around here that would probably give you more bang for the buck than what this is. I would be open to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can look at that for sure.
Yeah.
so are we under the gun to approve this tomorrow, or can we wait to see if you can come up with alternative funding?
I
Is it
think I
thi-
might,
Is it this kind of a state fiscal year?
Well, that's, I think my preference would be to look and start it on a clean, so maybe look at if we could, what flexibility we have to fund it with the state grant, and maybe we would start it fresh, aligned with the state fiscal year in that sense. I know the state contract goes off state fiscal year. This one's on a calendar year, so they're kind of off. But I don't know that that necessarily matters. I think we can look at what flexibility we have, and we may be able to just do the reimbursement with the state contract instead of with document recording fees, but I'll have to look at some more of the details.
So I don't think we're ready to move on this tomorrow then, are we?
So approval of these programs, you could still look and say, hey, maybe we can take the reimbursement out of the general versus out of the doc recording.
I think so.
I mean, I'm not, I know you don't have a definitive answer, so I'm not trying to pin you into a corner. I just want to know that we have the flexibility. If you look into that and you can, then when these reimbursements come in, it could be taken out of there and not doc recording.
I think that's a possibility. I would have to look, we might have to run it by legal and make sure we can do that, but I think that is a possibility. I know it's an allowable expense under the grant, so that part I'm confident about as long as we have the room. But yeah, we'll have to just kind of look at some of the fine print and see what we could do there. Yeah.
So we'll be okay to table it for a couple of weeks.
If you'd like to do that, we can.
So you're thinking you want a definitive answer before it goes before us again?
Well, the way I read it, this is saying we're going to use the document recording fees. It doesn't mention any other sources. So I'm not opposed to approving it, but I want us to have that caveat that, or other sources from the state.
Yeah, as written though, when we issue the contract, there's not a comment that these are doc recording fees, or there is?
It might say that on the agenda.
It does say it on the agenda.
Right. I was just trying to glance at the contract to see if we had it in the contract. I think worst case scenario, if we kept the contracts on the agenda tomorrow, we might have to come back and do an amendment. I think would be the worst case scenario if we needed to change some of the language. But
I'm okay either way.
Yeah. I am also. I totally get it, and I think you'll follow up on it, so that makes me comfortable, so I'm fine leaving it on there.
okay. Okay. And then the other item, the fourth item we have on the agenda for tomorrow is a health officer contract. So this is the result, Board of Health last week where the Board of Health approved a resolution to appoint Dr. Krager as our health officer. We had just did a contract with him as our interim health officer. So what we did is an amendment to that contract, extending it out. It will end up being about a 2-year contract is the way it's written right now, with the same compensation level that was in the interim contract. So that's on the agenda tomorrow as well.
It went to 2 years because I missed the argument there.
Historically, we've had about a 3-year contract, I believe, for health officer services. I think we went with we can certainly change it. We went with 2 years for this time. So we could change that if you'd like.
Because he still would be subject to the state law that means he can be dismissed by the recommendation of the
Correct,
Board of
yes,
Health.
yes.
Yeah, I think in practice, I think you're correct. I just don't want to give the idea that nobody else should be interested in a job because we have a contract for 3 years or 2 years, something, I think.
I thought we kind of figured out nobody was interested. He was the only one that applied, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there's a lot of reasons why people wouldn't go in lots of cases, but the incumbent always has an edge. I don't want to discourage us from being able to find ourselves in a place where we're unable to get anybody to answer anything just because, well, what's the point? They picked them last time, they'll pick them again. I'm not going to waste my time. So what made you change it from the 1 year that we had decided to put a head on it, or I thought we had?
Did you? I might have missed that if there was a decision about that.
I know we discussed it at the Board of Health.
I thought the contract had language, something like pending final approval by the board or the final selection by the board or so it wasn't a time limited contract because it was interim. I mean, it had the interim term in there.
Right, the contract was interim. The amendment puts end date to it as our health officer. So it goes, right now, the amendment runs it through
Yeah.
December of 2025.
There was, Commissioner Mortensen is correct. There was discussion during the Board of Health to do a 1-year contract with that.
Okay. We can adjust the end date to December of 2024.
And then review it at that point in time.
Sure. Yeah, we could do that.
The compensation, is that's what we were paying when we were doing Clark County?
It's
It's
less.
Right in there?
It's less.
It's less.
That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Weren't we more around 8,000?
I can't remember the monthly amount. It was 83 or 84,000 a year, I
I
think.
remember 84 and this is 80.
Right.
But now we got him right here in our county. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll adjust that date.
Well, the health board didn't specify a year. That was just a discussion.
It was a discussion. Right.
So you'll make it a year?
We can do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what the board would like. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it, and then we can move into Jessica, Human Resource.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jessica Warren, Human Resources. I don't have any HR requests this morning, but I did have a request for one executive session to discuss qualifications of an applicant.
Okay. How long you think?
Maybe 10 to start. I don't know exactly how long this one will be.
Okay. So go into executive session for
Qualifications of an applicant.
qualification. And we're looking to start at 10 minutes. Okay.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 15 minutes until 11:51.
Back from executive session, no decisions were made. I don't know if we have anything else today. Commissioner Weber, you have me rolling over on your SEPA questions and stuff. Are you gonna address those tomorrow or I keep running that through my head?
I'm not prepared to go forward with it. Just, but the correct course and how to make the points known is,
Yeah,
I still have to ponder on that, but I would just as soon take some extra time and bring in some other folks to say, how does this square up with affordable housing goals?
I agree with you on that. It just has me pondering. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else, gentlemen? Seeing none, we will adjourn.